You thought you got rid of me. Um, Again, welcome. Just so where I fit in, um, I'm not an architect. Some people might know my brother Justin Madden, who was the planning minister for a while. He was also Commonwealth Games minister for a while when we had the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. Apparently, did a great job. People said to me a lot of times, they said, he's done a great job, your brother. I said, of course he did. They gave him $1.5 billion to run the Commonwealth Games. I reckon he got a good chance of succeeding. Anybody here got a budget of $1.5 billion to play with at the moment? No, so he did a very good job. So I'm not an architect. I deal in what I call sustainable high performance. I work with your people, how to get good and stay good. So it's about getting the most out of your people. I work with the individual, the team, the leadership, and the culture. And coming through COVID, it's been a really interesting time about what's that like afterwards. And I think part of the thing is that we're starting to talk about third place. Because for a lot of people, the first and the second place became the one thing at home. Excuse me, I'm actually got out of my sick bed to come here. I've got a man flu. No, it's a bit more than man flu, but it's not COVID, so don't worry. I've actually been tested, so I can actually come and talk today. Um, but our third place has become really interesting because our first and second place has actually become the same thing for a lot of people, or was for a long time. So, what does our third place look like? And I'm going to give you some interpretation from my background in my area of dealing with people. And I think the third place post COVID is going to become even more important because the way we look at our world has changed a lot. The way we look at how we live, how we work, where we live, where we work, and because we couldn't get to our third place for a long time, whatever it was for us, we're really starting to look at what could that third place be. And while we're here, this is a really interesting place to start with. So I'm going to talk about third place, Moonee Valley Racecourse, and I'll give you a reason why I'm going to talk about that. Now, I'm also on the board of the Essendon Football Club. So if you're not don't back for Essendon, please just feel sorry for us. We're on the second last on the ladder at the moment, all right? So I was head of the Players Association, just from a football background, played a lot of sport, was head of the Players Association in a lot of change. I've been on other boards and I'm on the board of Essendon. So, and because we're in this place, I think that's a really good example to talk about how that's changing and why that's changing. Not from the playing point of view, but from the community point of view. So I'll talk about Windy Hill Precinct, which is the original place where I started playing football. It is now a part of the ownership of the Essendon Football Club still. I'll talk about the Essendon Football Club at Tullamarine, which is a whole new uh, aspect of our existence over 150 years, where it's changed into and morphed into much more than just a football club. And I'd just like to touch on Marvel Stadium, about what that could be in the future, to give you an idea as far as a professional sports club, what that third place could be. So if that's okay, we could go along with that. Is anybody against any of that? Does that make sense to you all? Thank you very much. And at any time, if you've got a question, I'll leave it to the end. No, if any time you've got a question, please ask. I'd really make sure that if I'm not giving the right information, then and you don't understand it, please ask a question. Okay. So Moonee Valley Racecourse, where we are. That's it. Lovely drone shot of where we are. Now, I'm really interested in this place as it evolves. And I'll tell you very simply, because that's the whole area is going to change over 10 years. So where we're standing in the what they call now the grandstand, part of the grandstand, is going to completely disappear. It's all going to be buildings. The grandstand is going to go down that side of the area. Down there is going to be the whole grandstand. It's going to change completely. And hopefully, we love artist impressionists. Part of it's going to look like that. It's going to look nice. It's going to have trees. It's going to have areas to move in, as well as offices, homes, etc. And I'm really interested. I have a personal interest in this because that is one of the areas they're selling, Thomas Street. Lovely new apartment they're talking about. I have a house 100 metres down the road. And hopefully my wife and I are going to downsize in that sometime in the future. So I am really interested in what's happening in this place because I'm a resident. So I'm really interested to see what's happening. And I think that's really important. And we have a lot of information. And I was saying before, there's still a lot of talk about what they can and can't do and how big the building's going to be and how many residents they can have and what type of resident and how many streets are going to be here and what type of restaurant or cafe or open area or garden they're going to have. And they've been very good because if you've come in from there, you'll see that there's end up being a soccer pitch in there maybe. few other things they're still working about it. But they're very good sales so far, because out the front, the first thing they've put in is they've put in a nice garden and a nice lawn, make it feeling very friendly. So far they're selling it to me very well at the moment. They're doing a great job. But I'm really interested to see how this evolves, because I'm not sure, but I think I'm older than most people in this room. I know I've had the grey put in to make myself look older, because people don't believe I'm this old. And you're allowed to smile if you think it's funny. It's okay. But I'm really interested, because I'm going to spend hopefully the next 30 years of my life, or 25 of them maybe, to actually be in this area. So I'm really interested to see. So I'm really interested in the third place there. Which leads me to my involvement with the Essendon Football Club as a local. Now, the Wind Hill precinct is in the middle of Essendon, up near, if you don't know there, it's up near Essendon Station. It's where Essendon played their football, VFL, and before it came AFL, for a lot of years. And that's about the area there. That's a nice little plan of where all the, just come out off the website, with all the trees are. Now, that's really interesting, because we've moved from there. And people see it as a football club. But it has a bit more. That's what people remember it. A lot of football being there. That's halftime, people having a kick, which is great. Always part of how do we get out there and what do we do when the footballers aren't playing. And of course, Moonee Valley has asked a lot of residents for their vision on what it's going to be, which is good and bad, because they want the locals to be involved. But we're going to have lots of choices. And sometimes you have too many choices, you don't know what to pick. But they're asking for the locals to have a look at it. But Essendon was originally the home of the Bombers, the Essendon Football Club. They're still involved. But also, it's the home of the Essendon Cricket Club. It's the home of the Essendon Bowls Club. The Essendon District Football League play their games there. And it's right on the corner is the Essendon Croquet Club, which has got its own little title. So for all the architects and designers there, it makes it really interesting for what you're going to do next. But also there's other things there as well. So it's more than just a sports place. Of course, like any sports place, you have Windy Hill, the venue. There's a whole lot happens there. We also have poker machines at the moment, which is a whole argument about should we keep them or should we not? What should we do with them? Should we go? What should we do with as far as the benefit to the members of having them or not having them? Because we represent the members. We also have on the corner the Wind Hill Fitness Centre, which is like everybody else was closed along the way. So you see there's a whole lot of things just for starters before we even go into what that third place could be. There's already lots of parts of the third place. And then the extension of that, and I'll come back to both of those, the extension of that is now we've moved up to Tullamarine. So as a professional football club, sporting club, we've made a big move to go, because that was in the middle of a residential area, and there's very little room for expansion. Now we're up on airport ground, and we've got that. Now that, and that's NSC Hangar. You always look after sponsors, NSC Hangar. That cost us about 24 million, I think. And we are just extending it now in the middle of COVID. That was a really good idea to do, to spend $21 million extending it to make it a really, really world-class venue. Inside it's called a hangar because it looks a bit like that. It's got a sprung floor with a whole lot of grass, plastic, rubber grass if you can have it. It's sprung so it can run around on it. It's about 80 metres by 50 metres. It can actually fit a jumbo jet in there, I think. So it's called a hangar. And we have this vision of it. Artist's interpretation is beautiful. It looks really good again, all the trees. Funny how the trees you put straight in become 20-year-old trees as soon as you put them in. It's beautiful, isn't it? But that's the vision of what it's going to be. It's going to be more than a football club. And why? Because, yes, the AFL is involved in it. We're an AFL side. Also, we have a VFL side, men's side. So that's an involvement. It is the home of the Paralympics Australia, because they didn't have a home in Australia. So part of the deal with the government is to actually have them that's their centre up there, which has been really good. They play rugby and basketball on the basketball court. If you've ever seen Paralympic rugby, those blokes are crazy. It's fantastic. And think about this. You think about, because some of them, most of them can't feel from the waist down, after they played, and they run into each other, they actually have things checked to make sure they're not broken because they can't feel them. They are seriously crazy people. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic game. We also have just started with the VFL women's side, which changes everything for us. It's fantastic. I have 2 daughters, 2 sons. So hopefully they have the equal opportunities we go forward. And we have a VFL women's side. And so part of that expansion is how do we fit that in with proper change rooms for them? They don't need to worry about sharing it with men. You can actually have it, a really good, classy place for them to go and store their belongings and look after themselves, etc., before and after games. We also are building a Hall of Fame. We had a Hall of Fame, but we're reconstructing it. You think about what that means, all the memorabilia, all the history. How do we connect that with the present? We're putting that in. We're also doing a Indigenous Hall of Fame to go along with that. Now, if you don't know Michael Long there, and there's a statue of him outside the club at the moment, he was the first AFL footballer to put his hand up and say, "No, I'm not taking the racism anymore." Great friend of mine. I have a great regard for Michael because he gave me an education about Indigenous culture and history that I never got at school. And I just thank him very much for that. But he's a great representative of what we're doing there. We're also going to have that AFL women's side. We're really chasing one. We think it's much better for us and our community, our sports club to have that. And we put in submission 2 years ago, and we didn't get it. Okay, so we didn't get it. But we're going to have another guy because I promised 2 clubs to other people already. So we're going to get it next year. We think we've got a really good submission. And just a little add to it, because where you have to start to think more is a few years ago we started the Purple Bombers, which is the LGBTQIA plus group, because we had people come to us saying, we don't feel safe going to the football. Now, in the modern world, that is terrible. Now, I'm director of football club. Nobody should go to a sporting group and feel like they're unwelcome or fear for their safety or fear about being abused. So we started the LGBTQIA group called the Purple Bombers. And remember, because everybody wants to be valued, and we want to value everybody who wants to be part of our club. So that's just a touch of what a football club is starting to become, or what a sports club's going to become. And all those things, and still evolving. I said, I'm not an expert on what the third place is, but you start to see what it could be, or how it could be. And the third place is not just physical. It's about the environment, but it is part of that environment, me dealing with people and groups and companies, is do you give them the best opportunity to be their best? That also means do you give them the surrounds, the environment, physical as well as cultural, to give them the best opportunity to be their best. That's what we're looking at. So for me, what does that mean? Oh, sorry, I had to touch on Marvel. Just quickly on Marvel. I'm probably gone over my time. Sorry, Annie. And he's really big on keeping me on time because he knows I talk in 30-minute lots. And if you miss me on 31 minutes, you've got to listen to the next 29. Marvel Stadium, now think about this. It's a whole new, AFL have bought it. It's going to be bigger and better, they say. Think about this. It's an inward-facing stadium. I remember someone, it's an inward-facing stadium. I went, yeah, because you face inwards and you watch the game. They said it's got to be more than that. What about the outward-facing aspect of it? Because you want people are going to be there. I've seen sport in England. I've seen sport in America, NFL America. Remember, NFL football goes for 4 15-minute quarters. Is on telly for 3.5 hours, and they're actually the play time is 11 minutes and 15 seconds, actual play time. So what else do you do there? There's a whole lot of other things. So they want that to be outward-facing as well, meaning if you got off the train at Spencer Street Stadium and walked to the ground, you should be involved in 7, 8, 9 different activities. Involvements, activations, they call them. There's got to be more than just a sports game itself. Now, that takes on a whole lot of other areas about what does that mean for the third place. So out of all that, for me, what's the third place going to be? Well, I think, and again, it's going, I said I'm not an expert, but I think as a member of a board that's got to make big decisions about a group that's involved in the community, third place is about the community. It's about inclusion. It's about diversity. And you've got to be sure you've got both of those, because you can talk about diversity and not have inclusion. You can have inclusion and not have diversity. There's 2 aspects of that. So you've got to have that in it. It's got to be about safety. It's got to be about education. It's got to be about entertainment. It's got to be about connection. It's got to be about history. It's got to be about health. A whole lot of things. Do we start putting medical centres in our places as well for the community? Of course, it's about well-being. It's about relaxation. And it's, of course, about multi-purpose. So there's my idea of, from a sports point of view, from a professional sports point of view, and a person dealing with getting people to be better, what that third place could be, or what maybe it should be. So that's my idea of third place, and I think I've taken my time, and thank you very much.
Simon, before you rush off real quick, have you back up here for a minute? Yeah. We liked you so much. We don't want you to leave. Before we bring on our... Is this on?
There you go.
There you go. Before we bring on our next speaker, does anyone have any questions for Simon?
Don't ask if we're going to win the premiership this year, all right? That's not those footy questions. All straightforward. Yes. What's your name? Madison?
And the meeting place, thank you. The meeting places around that stadium. I just wanted to know, with the other redevelopments that you mentioned, including Moonee Valley, if there's a focus on turning the stadium inside out as well, to sort of focus on the public spaces around the stadium to increase interaction.
A very good point. Yes, the easier answer is yes. Okay, I'll elaborate. I think people, especially, as I said, I've started to look at this because I live in the area. You just have to have that public space has become. Now think of anybody live or been down in the Docklands. With all good intention, is one of the windiest places. Forget about Windy Hill. It's one of the windiest places in the world. Put up all these buildings, didn't put enough trees in, didn't think, and there's just, now it's potentially a great place and they're working really on it. But how do you get the public place to be really public? Do you have a public place and everybody goes inside because it's too windy, or it's too rainy, or there's not enough cover on it, etc. So I think more and more places are looking at, and we're definitely looking at, we have to look at, say somebody comes to visit training, so tell them, is it inviting? We've changed the entrance to make it a bit grander and a bit more inviting. I'll always go through the shop on the way out. That's what you do. And there's got to be, people want to buy stuff. There's a cafe, really cool cafe. There's the area where you're going to go through all the Hall of Fame. There's areas where you can have functions, etc., etc. So the public spaces are becoming intrinsic to any development. And I think if you looked at some of the maps for here, that they really have to think about it. And we're dealing with the council with Windy Hill because there's so many aspects to it. That what is the public place going to look like? I don't know if anybody's been to Victoria Park in Collingwood, where used to be a VFL ground. It was all fenced off. They've made it a public open space where you can access it. They've got a little bit of history connected to it. It's one of the old scoreboards, and this open space where people can bring their dogs and walk them. They can run around it. There's still a social club. There's still other sports using it, but it really is about opening up that public space and making that public space really usable to a whole lot of groups. When my brother was sports minister, I always remember talking to him, and he was planning minister and sports minister, but then they combined sort of his concept. He said, if somebody comes to a country sporting, say a country football club, says, we want $10 million to do a new stadium, involve a stadium, and he goes, who's it going to be for? And he said, and they say, well, it's the footy club. They'll go, no, because that's too much money for one group. But if they came to him and said, well, it's for the footy club and the netball club, and then there's going to be an area for the baseball club to be involved, and there's going to be aspects of this, and this, and so the greater community, instead of this much of the community being involved, this much of the community is going to be involved. All of a sudden he goes, yeah, that's what I can see the use of that. So that concept of what's the best use of what we've got there, and you'll hear some. I've just looked at some of the presentation, some of the innovative and strange and wonderful ways we can achieve that. It's going to be very interesting. So there's a long answer to a short question. I said I could have just said yes. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Any other questions for Simon?
Going. God, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. I'd like to